Welcome today to the webinar here at the Child Study Center. I'm Dr. Kate Sullivan. I am a clinical psychologist here at the Child Study Center, primarily on the Autism Spectrum Disorder Service. I also direct our social learning program, which is our program with a lot of our groups, so social skills groups, as well as some of our specialty groups with parent training and some of our socio-sexual groups for teens. So welcome today. You can submit questions at any time by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel, and that's on the right side of your screen. We will answer questions at the end of our presentation. Great, so we'll get started. So I'm going to be talking today about the importance of social skills, the what and how of making and keeping friends. And here's an overview of what I'll be talking about today. I'll be talking about the importance of friendship for all of us, and then I'll go on to consequences of social challenges. So there's the importance of friendship, and then on the flip side, when we have social challenges, what impact does that make? And then the limitations of existing social skills interventions. So there are a lot of social skills programs and treatments out there, and what limitations do they have, and how can we maybe find other programs or kind of think and talk about the what and why and how of effective methods of social skills instruction. So that's what we'll be talking about today, and I'll get started here. So social skills is a pretty broad topic. It can cover anything from kind of elevator etiquette, where you're looking either at other people or the buttons. It could be ordering a meal in a restaurant. A lot of kind of functional social skills. Our lives are full of these social interactions. So why focus on friendships, making and keeping friends? Well, there's been a lot of research that's shown that having one or two close friends can actually be really important and really protective for us throughout our life. And one of the results and impacts of those research has come to show that later in life, being able to have one or two close friends really helps later adjustment in life. And this, when we think of ourselves right now, when we have a stressful day or when we've had kind of a big life event, who do we go to talk about those things? Usually our close friend, and it really buffers against those stressful events that we might have. And we're more likely to feel good about ourselves and even be more independent when we have one or two close friends that we can turn to talk about those things. So it really has this positive correlation with our self-esteem and with our own independence. And while this is very important for all of us, it really is extremely important when we think of individuals, kids, teens, young adults with special needs. So this is one of the important things to think about when we think about friendships. And again, on the flip side, if we don't have one or two close friends, we might even be rejected by our peers. This has a really strong impact on kind of our mental health outcomes and problems later in life, or even kind of in the somewhat close future. And if you want to predict who might have mental health problems, if you go into any middle school or high school and you see those kids who are peer rejected, those kids are going to have a little bit more anxiety and might be at risk for more low mood challenges. And some of the other risk factors that I've also outlined here in terms of some trouble with the juvenile system, either some delinquency from school, withdrawal from school, substance abuse, or even kind of suicidal ideation. So thinking about how this peer rejection can really impact our kids and how they might be feeling, and also some of the consequences. And the piece of this is that the kind of positive spin is that we know that peer rejection can have these consequences, and we know the importance of friendship. So if we can help our kids develop these social skills to kind of combat this peer rejection and build close friendships, then we can kind of preemptively avoid some of these things and really help our kids. So one of those pieces is providing some of the social skills for our kids. And so a lot of the kids who present for social skills treatment and for programs, they fall into kind of these two categories, either these socially rejected kids or these socially neglected kids. And I'm going to kind of help to kind of distinguish what that means. And so for these socially rejected kids, these are kids who are typically teased or bullied. They might also have a bad reputation. And a bad reputation means that they're basically doing anything that other kids don't like. And they do it consistently enough that they get a reputation for it. Their kids start to know that that's a kid who does this, and they don't want to maybe interact with those kids. And it might be that they're intrusive, they might interrupt, they might try to be funny, but the other kids just don't find them funny. They might find them a little more odd or weird. And so if they act in any way that other kids don't like, they might get this kind of bad reputation. And even though they're socially rejected, they're actively seeking out their peers. They really do want to make new friends. It's just that they're not being successful at it. And our socially neglected kids, on the other hand, are more of these withdrawn kids. They tend to be more shy, ignored by their peers, or maybe unnoticed. And they tend to kind of actively kind of avoid interacting with their peers for whatever reason. And that might be because they're a little bit more anxious. They might have more low mood. And so when we think of these two groups, kind of the socially rejected kids can be kids that we might often see who have symptoms typical of ADHD or autism. And then some of our socially neglected kids can also fall on the autism spectrum, but can also be some of our anxious kids too. But these are two of the kind of domains that we kind of think about when kids come to present for social skills treatment. And one of the things that we think about in terms of that is how can we best help them? If these are the skills that they're having difficulties with, what kind of skills do they need to be socially successful, and how can we address that? And so moving on, here, this is what we kind of call peer sociometric data. And this graph comes from the book, The Science of Making Friends. And I'll give more information on that book in just a little bit. And basically what this is it's kind of an aggregate of all these peer sociometric data that people have done. And what that is researchers will go into the schools and they'll ask kids, the classmates, to rate their other classmates on whether they accept them, what their kind of ratings are of the other kids. And this is how it kind of breaks down, this kind of aggregate. So typically if you go into any middle school, high school, grade school, this is what you'll, kind of a general sense of this is what you'll get. And so kids who feel not negative towards the kids or super positive towards the kids will kind of be in this average range, which is 55%. And that is where the majority of kids fall. 15% are the popular kids, and I just want to clarify that popular just means well known. That doesn't necessarily mean well liked, but 15% of the kids fall into that. And then 15% fall in this peer rejected category, and 15% fall in the socially neglected category. So just taking a look at this as a visual, in any middle school or high school you go into, you're going to have a third of the kids actually being socially neglected or rejected. And so that's where the social skills treatment really comes in. Remember, the impact of not having one or two close friends is really going to impact our kids in terms of their mood, their self-esteem, their independence. And so if we can prevent that with some positive social skills training to help those kids, we can really make a difference. And so that's one of the pieces of why this is important. There are social skills programs out there in the community and at schools, but the research suggests that they don't tend to be very effective, and there's a number of arguments why that might be. One is that they don't use evidence-based curricula, and what that means is there hasn't been research to actually test these programs and show that they're effective. And to be fair to communities and schools and agencies, it's really difficult to find evidence-based practices for social skills. The Cochrane report, which is this kind of meta-analysis of social skills groups that are out there that are shown to be effective, or research has been done on them. It showed for kids who have autism spectrum disorders, who we know a hallmark symptom of that is challenges with social skills. There was only five social skills group, training programs that were approved to have evidence, and only 2 of them had manuals that were actually accessible. So anyone could actually get those manuals and implement the treatment. And only 1 of those 5 was actually targeted towards adolescents and young adults who also need social skills. They're kind of at a point in their life where they're transitioning to increased independence and increased responsibility and kind of navigating more independently the social world. And there was only one evidence-based program out there for that. So there really is kind of this dearth of evidence-based programming, so it is challenging for communities and agencies and schools to be implementing those. Another issue that exists is social skills treatments that are out there don't necessarily tailor to the learning or cognitive styles of the kids that they're treating. So if you think again, for example, of kids who are on the autism spectrum, they tend to be more literal, more concrete, and very black and white. And so teaching in analogies or kind of metaphors or kind of figurative language isn't very useful for those kids. So instead, kind of tailoring the teaching methods to those children and really thinking about the kind of abstract nature of social skills, such as have a two-way conversation. Well, what does that mean? How do you break that down into actual kind of concrete steps so a child can understand what they actually need to do to have what that actually means, that concept. And the other piece to the social skills is we don't want to be teaching what we as adults necessarily think kids should do, but what kids who are socially successful are naturally doing. And this isn't happening in social skills training. We have the best set of intentions, but sometimes we end up giving bad advice, and we don't know any better. Someone might have told us to do something at one point in time, and we pass that along. But we don't want to teach kids what we think they should be doing. We want to teach them, again, what actually works in reality. So basing those skills on what kids are actually doing who are socially successful is really important. And the other piece is homework assignments. Not a lot of social skills programs include homework assignments, and it's really important. It's just like math. You got to practice. Going to once a week of social skills and then going home. You can't expect kids to practice that on their own. So we're requiring and incorporating homework into the social skills program. It's really important to generalize those skills out in the community, out in those natural social settings that they're going to be in. And the last piece that kind of can be limiting of current social skills programs that are often out there is they don't include either a parent or a teacher, some kind of social coach, because if the child is going once a week to a program for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and then they go home, there's no generalization, no coaching outside of that. So if we are able to provide teachers or parents with the same kind of tools and skills, then they can actually, in the process of their day-to-day life, kind of help coach and strengthen those social skills for their kids, teens, and young adults. And that's a really important piece, and it really strengthens the durability and sustainability of the skills. So those are really important pieces that oftentimes social skills programs just don't have. So I want to talk a little bit more about the importance of having parent and teacher support. In addition to kind of generalizing it, a big piece is, especially for younger kids, it's about creating those social opportunities and social activities. So thinking about what does my kid like? What do they like to do? What are they interested in? And help to reinforce that. Help your child get access to that. So, and this is beyond what other kind of extracurricular activities your child might be doing in terms of maybe tutoring or a swim class, all wonderful, helpful things for them to be doing. But if your child isn't interested in swimming and isn't interested in necessarily the subject that they're getting tutored in, it's more kind of a requirement or an important skill to have, they're not necessarily going to find kids with the same similar interest as them within those settings. So it's really important to think about, what is my child interested in? Is it, is it sci-fi or something like that? And is there a group or an activity? Is it gaming or computer programming? There's a lot of different programs around that can provide those, and finding those out, enrolling your child so that when they do go to these activities, they find kids with the same common interest. And that's a really important piece to building a friendship, is finding kids who have similar interests as you. So that's a big piece of the parent support, is kind of creating those social opportunities and activities based on what the child's interested in. And also the homework assignments, being that social coach and being able to provide the tools for that, helping to create opportunities for practicing skills, providing immediate feedback in the context of kind of a social interaction can be really important and really helpful in improving the social skills for that kid. And so that is a big piece in terms of having a parent involvement in the social skills. And some programs, again, don't have that. It's logistically difficult, so it kind of makes sense, but it's a really important piece to help maximize the effects of these social skills. So I'm going to move on to talk about one of the programs that was one of those evidence-based programs in those 5. For children with autism spectrum disorders, but also for kids who have ADHD and anxiety and low mood. It's kind of expanded in its scope. And this, it's called the PEERS program, and it's an acronym for Program for the Education and Enrichment of Social Skills, or of Relationship Skills. And the research was launched in 2004 at UCLA, and it's a manualized group treatment, and this is actually accessible. It's on Amazon, you can order it, and it's evidence-based. They have the teen manual. The young adult manual isn't published yet. There's also, from the same group, the Children's Friendship Program for younger kids in elementary school and grade school, and basically it offers social skills throughout either a 14-week or 16-week curriculum. It's 90 minutes weekly with parents and kids coming. The parents are in a separate room during the program, so they have concurrent separate sessions. And each session focuses on a different skill and kind of focuses, again, in that way of teaching, modeling after kind of and adapting to the cognitive and learning styles of the kids that we're teaching. There's also an evidence base for school professionals. So I said parent and teacher involvement, and this is actually a school-based program. This is also available on Amazon, and it's actually been implemented in some schools. I think in Canada they actually have this as a required course. Some schools have been offering it as like a lunch bunch kind of group where the course is offered during lunch. In other schools it's an optional elective. So it's very cool. It can be incorporated into the school curriculum as well. And then this is a resource for parents. This is actually the PEERS manual adapted for families who can't access PEERS groups. There are certified trainers around the country and who offer the program. Here at the Child Study Center, we do have the PEERS program as well for teens and young adults, as well as Children's Friendship from kindergarten through 5th grade. So that's this is for families who don't have access to that, and it's a really great resource, also available on Amazon and in bookstores. There's a companion DVD that actually shows some of the role plays on how to do the skill, what not to do, and what to do. And finally, there's a Friend Maker app, and so this is actually an app that outlines the skills for each session. So whether or not you're actually enrolled in a PEERS group, you can have access to this. I think it's $1 on iTunes, and again, it shows those videos and can really be helpful to help parents and kids and teens kind of with that social coaching. And so in terms of the rules and steps, basically how we kind of break it down is there's ecologically valid social skills, what kids who are socially successful are actually doing. So we say, here are the do's, what you want to do for this skill, and then the common social errors that often kids who have social challenges might be doing. So we say, don't do this, but do this, and that's kind of how we break down the rules and steps. And we break down very concrete parts. So a lot of we have trading information as kind of our overall term for having a conversation, and we break that into do's and don'ts. So I wanted to provide a couple of examples for that. So when we think of the common conversational errors that a lot of our teens or kids might make when they talk to other people, some of those might include this. So I'm gonna give you guys kind of an example of that. Let's see if I can. There we go. I'll show you right here.
Hey Ben, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I just got back from the comic book convention.
Oh, no way?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was downtown and everyone was there. We all dressed up. Yeah, I wore the coolest outfit. I met, all the famous authors. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was really cool. Everyone was dressing up. And I think I'm going to go next week also. But I'm not sure what I'm going to wear because I don't want to wear the same thing. But maybe I'll get a new one. Should probably buy eBay or something to buy that. But everyone was wearing the coolest costumes. I got a ton of pictures, so maybe I'll get some good ideas there.
Yeah.
I think there's one also the weekend after. I'm going to try and go to that too. Just get a bunch of autographs, meet a bunch of people. So we'll see. Yeah, a lot of my friends want to go, so I figure I'll just go with them.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a drive, but it's so worth it because it's a really big comic convention. But yeah, so it'll be fun. I really can't wait for it.
All right. So that was an example of what we show them what not to do. And what we do from that is we actually help develop, or the teens or kids will develop a rule around this. So we'll say, what was Ben doing wrong or Alex doing wrong? And they actually come up with the rule. It's kind of the Socratic method of teaching. They watch them and say, oh my goodness, he was totally hogging the conversation. So we have the rule set out here, but the teens and kids actually end up creating it within the group, and they it helps with them with buy-in, and they become pretty involved in the process of creating these rules. And so conversation hogging is one of those common social errors, using repetitive themes, kind of disregarding the other person's interest, really kind of hogging it. So in addition to the rule and kind of developing the rule, we also, in every role play, incorporate perspective taking questions, because in addition to kind of learning the rule, it's about understanding why we have that rule. Why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work? So what was that like for Ben? Ben was the one, if you're viewing this on your left, or sorry, on the right, who was not able to get a word in edgewise. And then we say, and usually it's frustrating, boring. What did Ben think of Alex? He seemed kind of selfish or self-absorbed. Will Ben want to talk to Alex again? Probably not, right? So they get this, their perspective taking, this cognitive, social perspective, as well as the skill. Another one is, and I'll run through this pretty quickly because I know we're running out of time, is verbal teasing. There are three things that adults typically tell kids to do when they're teased. It's either ignore, walk away, or tell an adult, and it doesn't often work. And there's reasons why, because if you ignore, tell an adult, or walk away, you're actually only enticing the bully or the teaser to keep teasing you, right? They're either getting a response from you. If you're not responding, if you tell an adult, now you're labeled as kind of a tattletale or a snitch. So those aren't things that are actually working. So what do kids do who are getting teased? And the important thing to think about here is all of us get teased. If you think back to grade school, high school, at some point everyone gets teased, even the popular kids. And it's how you react to the teasing that actually determines how severely or how chronically you'll be teased. So there are actual kind of skills associated with that. And these are kind of the skills that we highlight in our group in the peers and CFP programs here. Don't walk away or tell an adult. Don't show you're upset. What you want to do is you want to act like the person said didn't bother you. That's a very important piece. You don't want to give the teaser the pleasure of actually getting you riled up. And then you provide a short comeback, and a very short one. So here's on the side of the screen is different ones. So whatever, anyway, so what, big deal. And you want to say about 3 of those, because if you say 1, they're going to keep on teasing you. So you say 3, and then you walk away and remove yourself from the situation. So it basically shows that what the person said didn't bother you, you keep your cool, and then you walk away. And that is kind of one of the other ones in terms of what naturally socially successful kids are actually doing in terms of this, and what us as parents, even with best of intentions, or adults, are telling our kids to do that actually isn't working. So I think we have time for one more. We'll skip the role play. It's basically showing them actually doing this, but you get kind of the idea here. So in terms of our social learning program, here's some information. As I mentioned, we do offer groups here across the age span, kindergarten up to 35 years old, that focuses on this evidence-based method of social skill instruction. And that's the number and our email for that. So thank you all for listening. And then we have a couple of questions. All right, so one of the questions is, what if my child has been going to the same school and has somewhat of a bad reputation? How can he or she make friends? And this actually happens a lot with our kids that come into our social groups, and it can be really challenging. Some of kids have been involved in school for a long time, and they do have kind of a bad reputation from their classmates, and sometimes it's a small class, and so they're just known for something, and it can be hard to make new friends. And so what we suggest to those families is, if they're going to stay in that school, to really, as I mentioned before, find activities or after school opportunities for their child to make new friends and meet new kids. And a big piece of that is thinking of what is their child interested in, what kind of activities or movies, it might be sci-fi, it might be gaming, it might be Pokemon Go, whatever it might be, to find an activity that meets at least once a week, and it has kids of their same age with that interest that they can go to and be involved in. So at least they can develop one or two of those close friends. They don't need to have a huge group, just one or two close friends. So if they're able to find and access someone in one of those after school activities, that can be really protective and really beneficial. Even if at school they might not have the opportunity to make new friends or develop those relationships. All right, another question. How do you teach social skills to a student who may be resistant to learning or don't think they need help? This is a tough one, and I'll say with our, for many of our social groups here, for our teen and young adult especially, the Peers program is specifically designed for kids who are motivated, not super excited, but kind of recognize that, okay, I could maybe use a couple of skills. It is really challenging for someone who is resistant to learning or don't think they need help. I think part of that is building that child's awareness a little bit in terms of, to an extent that you can, a little bit of kind of motivational interviewing in terms of helping to build that. I think the first step is really some of the social cognition piece. So helping them realize what, especially if they might be the receiver of an interaction that might be more intrusive or interrupting, that they can actually see that perspective of being on the receiving end. So if there's a way to kind of role play it or model that so that they can kind of get a sense of what that might be like. It's about building that social awareness a little bit so that they can understand that. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time. It does. Sometimes for a child or a student to recognize that they might need a little help, and they might recognize that they just might, as you might not admit it, they might be a little bit resistant. And so I think approaching it in a way that might be, and it might be at the onset, it's just giving them opportunities for more of those kind of activities outside of school. So indirectly, they just feel like they get to be in an activity or an opportunity to meet new kids, and it's something they like anyway. And then they kind of might recognize that they are more successful in that setting, and might increase motivation because they find kids that they actually might connect with. So, okay. We have a question here. My 7-year-old enjoys one-on-one activities with other kids and various instructors. How can I open up my child to joining groups? I feel like this might be inhibiting her progress. Yeah, and so I think that one-on-one activities are great, and the group piece is an important piece in terms of it's another skill set, right? In terms of, I think it's great that your child is really enjoys one-on-one interactions and is successful at those. And I think it's another social skill to be able to enter and be successful in group play. And so I think part of that might be a little bit of just kind of graded exposure of, again, an activity around a subject of interest for your 7-year-old, and kind of going to that not regularly, but just kind of once in a while, so she gets a sense, and it might be with a smaller group, and kind of building that up so that it's subject around her interest, starting with a little bit of a smaller group, or maybe if she has a couple of friends, building like a triad that she's able to be in at least a 3-person group. And then some of it is building the skill set of joining the game. She's motivated to join what the other kids are playing, and how do you do that successfully? A big piece is knowing what game it is, so you don't have to ask, how do you play this, or what is this, but already knowing. And so that's a big piece when we talk about that in some of our social skills for the younger kids, like 7-year-olds. It's kind of, how do you join other kids who are playing? So I would say start with a smaller group, and maybe kind of think of an activity that she might be interested in and that doesn't meet regularly, or you don't have to kind of sign up for, but she could just attend and kind of get a little bit of exposure to a bigger group to see if she kind of gets more comfortable with that. All right, here's our last question. Can adults who may have needed social skills training as a child but didn't receive it still follow this type of training? For sure, yeah. Definitely. We have here our young adult group. It's for 18 to 35-year-olds, and it can be beyond that. For our group, we don't. That's kind of how we advertise it. But for young adults who didn't get this type of training as a child, can certainly benefit. And even kids who had social skills training as children, the social landscape changes as you age, and so young adults actually need other types of social skills as they get older, navigating the workplace. Our peers young adult group actually spends 4 sessions on dating in terms of how you build romantic relationships, what are the social rules around that. And so for an adult who hasn't received social skills in the past, they can certainly benefit from a program at this point. Well, thank you everyone on the behalf of the Child Stay Center. We really appreciate you joining us for this webinar today. Once you leave the webinar, you'll receive a survey, and we would appreciate it if you would complete it. You'll also receive a follow-up email within a day or two with a link to today's recording of today's presentation. And then we hope you can join us for our next webinar, The Truth About Timeouts, Effective Punishment for Young Children. That's on Tuesday, October 18th at 1 p.m. Thanks again, everyone. Bye.